I lost everything over the dumbest mistake of my life. Hi, true story. My name's Bell, and I never thought I'd be one of the people emailing you. I found your channel by accident about 3 months ago while I was sitting in my friend's kitchen, scrolling on her iPad after another sleepless night. I had typed relationship mistakes into YouTube, hoping for, I don't even know, advice, comfort, maybe to hear that someone else's mess was worse than mine so I could feel less like the villain in my own story. The first video I clicked was about a man whose wife cheated and how he cut her off completely. As I listened, my stomach was in knots because I knew I was listening to my own story, just not from my side. I decided then that maybe I should tell my version. Maybe someone out there can understand how one moment, one stupid, wine-soaked moment, can destroy everything you thought was solid. I want to be clear right from the start. I am not proud of what I did. I'm not here to make myself the victim. But I also can't sit here and pretend it was all calculated and cold-blooded. The truth is, it was a perfect storm of bad timing, bad decisions, and bad judgment. How it happened. I was married to Mark for just under 8 years. He's a good man, steady, responsible, the kind of person who plans his lunches for the week on Sunday night and leaves for work at the exact same minute every day. He's not perfect, but who is? We had our little fights over dishes or his habit of falling asleep with the TV blaring, but overall, we were fine, or so I thought. That day, I swear to you, I never planned for anything to happen. I work in marketing at a mid-sized company, and there's this guy, Derek, who works in the graphic design department. Derek's one of those people you get along with instantly. Funny in a sarcastic way, but not overbearing. We'd worked on projects together, and over time we'd developed a comfortable rapport. That morning, I'd been working from home because my boss gave me the green light to do so on slow days. Derek had been texting me about a campaign we were putting together. Somewhere in the conversation, he mentioned he was nearby grabbing lunch supplies for the office. I said something like, "You should just swing by here and we can knock it out instead of emailing back and forth." When he showed up, I offered him something to drink. I had this bottle of wine sitting on the counter from the weekend. It was barely noon, but in my head, I thought, we're just having a glass while we work. It's harmless. I don't even know when it stopped being harmless. One glass turned into two, two turned into three, and by then we weren't working anymore. We were sitting on the couch, laughing way too loud, telling stories that had nothing to do with our jobs. I felt light, warm, and reckless in a way I hadn't felt in years. And then, one thing led to another. I know that's cliche, but there's no better way to put it. It wasn't some long buildup. It was like someone flipped a switch, and suddenly we were kissing. The worst timing possible. Here's the thing about Mark. He never comes home for lunch. Not once in all the years we'd been married. He's the kind of man who eats at his desk and scrolls through stock reports on his phone. But that day, that one day, he decided to surprise me. I didn't even hear his car pull into the driveway over the sound of the wine and the stupid laughter and us. The first thing I heard was the front door opening. My stomach dropped, but before I could even get to my feet, he was in the hallway. And then, the sound I will never forget, the bedroom door crashing open. I froze. I don't know if it was the alcohol or the shock, but I just sat there, my whole body going cold. And then I saw him. Mark was standing there, his eyes red and wet, his jaw tight like he was trying to keep himself from shaking. He didn't yell. He didn't cuss. He didn't even say my name. He just looked at me like I was a stranger who had broken into his life. The aftermath. I scrambled for words. It's not what it looks like. It was an accident. We were drinking. But even as I said them, I could see how useless they were. Derek pulled his shirt back on and mumbled something about leaving, and Mark stepped aside to let him pass, never taking his eyes off me. He walked out of that room, grabbed his car keys, and was gone within minutes. No shouting, no threats, just gone. I called him over and over, text after text. That first day, I think I must have called 20 times. No answer. The next morning, I found an email from him. Short, cold, and final. He said he'd be staying with a friend, that he wanted a divorce, and that I should pack up his belongings for when he sent someone to collect them. I thought he was bluffing. We'd been through rough patches before. Surely we could talk this out, right? I told myself once he cooled down, we'd sit down like adults and figure out what had just happened. But I underestimated just how done he was. The divorce. Within a week, I had divorce papers in my mailbox. He didn't even come to the house to talk. He just had them delivered. I tried everything to get him to listen. I wrote him letters, sent long emails explaining that I'd never meant for it to happen, that it was the wine, that I wasn't thinking straight. Nothing. He never replied. When we finally did see each other at the courthouse, it was like talking to a wall. He was polite but distant, like I was a coworker he barely knew. He didn't yell or accuse. He just ended it. He didn't want the house, didn't want the furniture, didn't even ask for any money. All he took were his personal belongings, his car, and a few boxes of sentimental stuff. The rest, he left it behind. I thought that was a blessing at first. I thought, at least I get to keep the house. But keeping it turned out to be my undoing. Losing the house, Mark had been the one who managed our finances. After the divorce, I realized just how much of our lifestyle had been possible because he was careful with money. I was paying the mortgage alone now, and between that, utilities, and my own bills, it became impossible to keep up. I tried to refinance, but my credit wasn't good enough. I sold what I could. Furniture, electronics, even some of my jewelry. It still wasn't enough. The bank foreclosed 3 months later. That was the day I hit rock bottom. Not the day Mark left, not the day I signed the divorce papers. It was the day I stood on my own front lawn, watching strangers carry my things out to a moving truck, knowing I had nowhere to go. Living with my friend. My only option was to move in with my friend Jenna. She's been great to me, don't get me wrong. She opened her home without hesitation. But she's a single mom with 2 kids under 10, and I'm not proud to admit this, but they get on my nerves. It's constant noise, cartoons blaring, toys everywhere, bedtime meltdowns. I went from having a quiet house to sharing a cramped apartment with chaos, and every time I feel irritated, I remind myself you did this to yourself. Blocked out completely. Mark didn't just cut me off. He blocked me on everything. Phone, social media, email. Even his family won't speak to me. His sister and I used to be close, and I thought maybe she'd hear me out. But when I called, she hung up before I finished my sentence. I guess I can't blame them. To them, I'm the woman who betrayed their brother, their son, their friend. They don't care that it wasn't planned or that the wine played a part. They just see the end result. Why I'm writing? I'm not writing to get sympathy. I'm writing because I want people to understand that sometimes the worst mistakes don't come from months of scheming or unhappiness. They come from one bad day, one bad choice, and one bad glass, or 3, of wine. I know there are people watching your videos who have been cheated on, and I know they probably think there's no such thing as an accidental betrayal. Maybe they're right, but I swear on everything I have left, I never wanted to hurt Mark. If I could go back to that morning, I'd pour Derek a glass of water instead. Now I'm just trying to rebuild my life, one awkward roommate situation at a time, and I hope maybe if Mark ever hears this, he'll know I still think about him every day. Thanks for letting me tell my side. Hi, True Story. It's Belle again. I wasn't sure if I should write you a follow-up because the first email was already embarrassing enough, but something about getting it all off my chest last time made me feel lighter, even if no one reading my story feels sympathy for me. Maybe it's selfish, but writing is the only time I feel like I can actually speak without being cut off or blocked. Since I last wrote, I've been trying to put my life back together, but if I'm being honest, I feel like I'm stuck in quicksand. Every time I think I'm finding my footing, something else happens, and I'm right back where I started. Or worse, the depression. I didn't realize how bad I'd gotten until about a month ago. At first, I told myself I was just sad and that it was normal after a divorce. I thought I'd bounce back with time, but weeks went by, then months, and instead of feeling better, I started waking up every day with this heavy pit in my stomach. I don't mean sad like crying at commercials. I mean sad like not wanting to get out of bed, like staring at the ceiling for hours, knowing there are things I should be doing, but feeling completely paralyzed. There were days I didn't even shower, days I only ate because Jenna would knock on my door and say, "You've got to eat something, Belle," while handing me a plate of whatever she'd made for her kids. And then there was the anger, not at Mark anymore, that's complicated, but at myself. I'd replay that day over and over in my head, almost punishing myself with it. I'd see his face in the doorway, the tears in his eyes, and I'd think, how could you be so stupid? The phone call with my therapist. Jenna was the one who suggested therapy. She said I needed professional help because talking to her wasn't cutting it. At first, I took offense. I mean, who wants to hear that they need help? But deep down, I knew she was right. So I booked a virtual appointment with a therapist named Dr. Monica. She's middle-aged, calm-voiced, and has that way of making you feel like she's genuinely listening. The first call was a disaster because I cried so much I could barely speak, but she told me that was fine, that it was part of the process. Last week, I had my third session over the phone. I was sitting at Jenna's kitchen table, the sound of her kids playing some loud video game in the background, when Dr. Monica asked me, "Belle, tell me about the mornings. What's the hardest part of the day for you right now?" I hesitated because I didn't want to sound pathetic, but I told her the truth. That mornings are the worst because they remind me of how much my life has changed. I used to wake up in my own bed, in my own house next to my husband. Now I wake up in a room that smells like lavender air freshener, Jenna's choice, not mine, with mismatched furniture and a twin-sized bed that creaks if I move an inch. She asked me to describe my routine. I almost laughed because there isn't one. Most days I wake up late, scroll on my phone until my eyes hurt, and then wander into the kitchen to make coffee, if there's any left after Jenna. "Do you think having more structure would help you feel less stuck?" she asked. I told her maybe, but the truth is, Jenna's been giving me plenty of structure, just not the kind that makes me feel independent. Feeling like a child again. When I moved in, I thought Jenna was doing me a favor, and she was, at first. But lately, it started to feel less like I'm a guest and more like I'm a teenager living under her roof. She leaves me chore lists, literal lists. She'll stick a post-it on my door that says, "Dishes after dinner." "Sweep the living room, take out the trash." It's not that I mind helping, I should help, but the way she writes it out, like I'm one of her kids, grates on me. The other day, I was watching TV in the living room when she walked in with a laundry basket and said, "Belle, I need you to fold these for me before I get back." She didn't ask, she told me. And where was she going? Out on a date, the babysitting. That's another thing. Jenna has started using me as a built-in babysitter. At first, I didn't mind watching her kids for an hour while she ran errands. But now, she'll dress up, put on perfume, and announce she's meeting someone, and then just assume I'll keep the kids. She doesn't pay me. She doesn't even say thank you half the time. And it's never just an hour. It's 3, sometimes 4 hours of breaking up fights over the Xbox, making them dinner, and dealing with bedtime tantrums. Last Friday, she texted me from her date to say she'd be a little late, which turned into 1:15 in the morning. Her kids had been in bed since 9, but I still had to listen for them in case they got up. By the time she got home, I was exhausted and annoyed. She just kicked her heels off, said, "Thanks, girl," and went to bed. Talking about it in therapy. When I told Dr. Monica about the chores and the babysitting, she said, "It sounds like you're feeling taken advantage of. Have you set any boundaries with Jenna?" I wanted to say no because I have nowhere else to go. That's the truth. Jenna knows I can't afford rent right now, so what am I going to do? Demand she stop? She could just as easily tell me to pack my bags. Dr. Monica suggested I start small. Maybe tell Jenna I can't babysit on weeknights because it messes with my sleep schedule, or that I'll help with chores, but I'd like to choose which ones instead of having a list handed to me. I nodded along, but inside I was thinking, yeah, right. Jenna's been single-handedly keeping me off the street. I don't feel like I have the right to complain, even if I'm miserable. The days all blend together. Sometimes I think the hardest part of this depression is how repetitive my days have become. I wake up, do whatever Jenna's decided I should do, and then just wait for the day to end. I miss having my own life, my own home, my own decisions, even my own mistakes, if that makes sense. Here, I feel like I'm living in someone else's story, just filling the background role until I disappear. And every time I hear Jenna laughing in the kitchen with her date or talking about her weekend plans, I think about how I used to have someone too, Mark. I don't know if he's dating. I don't know anything about his life now because he's still got me blocked everywhere. But sometimes, when I see Jenna getting ready to go out, I picture Mark with someone else. It's like being punched in the stomach. Dr. Monica says this is part of the grieving process, that I'm not just mourning the relationship, but the life we had. And she's right. I'm grieving Saturday mornings with coffee and the paper. I'm grieving our little inside jokes. I'm grieving the version of myself that still had his trust. Where I'm at now, I'm still in therapy. I'm trying to do the small wins thing Dr. Monica talks about, making my bed, taking walks, cooking something healthy. But it's hard to care when it feels like I'm treading water in someone else's pool. Maybe someday I'll look back and see this as a turning point. Right now, it just feels like another chapter in the mess I made for myself. Thanks for letting me write again. Even if no one reading this believes in accidents when it comes to cheating, at least I've told my truth.